If you're in the military, you do what you're told. We're not responsible. And so after Nuremberg, the United Nations, by 1950, created the Nuremberg Convention. The Nuremberg Convention, signed by many nations around the world, including the United States, said that people who are obeying orders under military command or any command from their higher officials are responsible for their actions. And if they engage in war crimes or crimes against humanity, they are responsible personally. And so that's the first time in human history, right, that this idea has come that there's a personal responsibility of people who are in military for their actions. What the International Criminal Court is, which the Assembly of States Parties, now about 120 countries working together, not including the United States, which hasn't been part of that, they decided that these Nuremberg principles had to be enforced in some way. Right? People had to be held responsible for their actions, and just to have a convention isn't enough. You've got to have enforcement. Right? This is government in some sense. So they created the International Criminal Court, and it's now functioning. It opened its doors in 2002, and it's now functioning. But it was created by an assembly of states who are sovereign nations and who aren't about to give up that sovereignty, right? And we saw that one aspect of sovereignty is legitimate, internal authority, rule of law internally. The other aspect of sovereignty is not legitimate, right? It is lawlessness. It says that I recognize no force over myself. The ICC is predicated on the principle of complementarity. That's what they call it. Eugenia and I were at the 10th review conference of the ICC in the year 2012 in Uganda, Africa. And it was there it was very well attended by all these nations and so on. And the principle of complementarity says that the court cannot subpoena any witness or it cannot establish a warrant for arrest of any person anywhere in the world, cannot do this without the agreement, the complementary agreement of the nation that person is in, who would be one of the nations in the Assembly of States Parties. Because the nations are not going to give a court authority over themselves. Right? So the ICC is simply, and what we did in the Provisional World Parliament is take the excellent Rome Statute of the Criminal Court, Eugenia did most of that work, and we reissued that as a genuine law for the world court system, which means that the court, when it issues a warrant, has authority to do this. It doesn't have to request that someone come before the court as a subpoena. It has the authority to mandate. And so this is, and it's the same with the International Court of Justice. You may know in The Hague, the International Court of Justice is there to adjudicate disputes between nations. But coming before the court is voluntary on the part of nations. It has no authority to force nations to come before it, and it has no authority, once it makes its decisions, to enforce them. The U.S. in Nicaragua were in that court in the 1980s because you might remember the United States had the Contra terrorists housed in Honduras who were coming into Nicaragua and raping and murdering and killing the citizens of Nicaragua. And the U.S. said, unless we're going to keep doing this to you until you get rid of the Sandinista socialists in your country. They went before the court, and the U.S. in its arrogance said, okay, we'll go before the court voluntarily. The court ruled in favor of Nicaragua. It said the U.S. had violated international law, and it assigned $7 billion in damage. Or I don't remember the exact figure, I might be wrong with that, but quite a lot of money. How much of that do you think has been paid?
Zero.
Zero. Zero. That's not government, right? This is the nation state, the sovereign nation state system that is incapable of controlling the big and powerful nations. They do what they want. Yes.
Just a quick question. So there is a collegium of world judges, but no court at this time?
No court at this time.
So so I guess that makes this question not fit, but I was wondering if any of the individual ratifiers had ever appealed to the collegium, of course they're not a court, for redress of any grievance under any... Not yet. No, because there's no mechanism for that until there's a court?
Right.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
I was have a question. So you were speaking on the international, international criminal court. Is this where you were saying that that military personnel are held accountable for their actions in war, even though they're bound by the contracts and carrying out orders? How does that? How do you were able to breach that contract or break that liability to
Well, yeah, it's a good question, but anyone in the military is in a bind, right? Since Nuremberg at least, right? Because anyone in the military, if you disobey orders, you're in deep doo-doo, right? And they have capacity to really punish people. When they ordered deployment to Iraq in the Second Iraq War in 2003, there were a few officers that refused to go. They said this is an illegal war. This is an aggression, invasion, and it violates international law. And the U.S. was brutal with them. It prosecuted them, right? And one or two of them actually got off because they had good representation from lawyers who rallied behind them and so on. But it's a serious thing, right? And if we can get rid of war, which would be, what we're trying to do on this planet, people wouldn't be in that bind. But, what this principle does, since Nuremberg, and since the Nuremberg Convention in 1950, is say that, under international law, people are responsible for their individual actions. And illegal order, it's an illegal order if you're, ordered to torture someone or...
Exactly what law are you speaking of?
Pardon?
What law exactly are you speaking of?
You can go on the web and find it. It's called the Nuremberg Convention of 1950.
You were saying they were breaking...
That's the law.
Oh, so
that's international law, yeah. International law which is not enforceable. And the ICC is the first step toward enforcing it. But as we saw, it's limited by the nation-state system.